Welcome back to our next panel, betting on esports, and we have a great lineup again with us. We have Ebbe Groes, CEO of EveryMatrix. We have Dinos from Altenar, as well as Martin Clarke from Digitain. So certainly all folks have been hit significantly by the sports betting industry, and all three folks have adapted fairly well, as we will find out in the next 20 minutes. Ebbe, I'd love to start with you. Sports betting, what a disaster in terms of games not being played. You know, who would have ever thought we'd be discussing this when we were at ICE just last February? Yet here we are talking about esports. What's your take on the situation? What has happened, and how has EveryMatrix faced the bull?
Yes, I'm sorry. Of course, unprecedented, mind-blowing, once-in-a-lifetime experience. So, yeah, something that none of us could ever have prepared for, and something that I think will help reveal things about ourselves, about our companies, about our clients. I think we will all have learned a lot from this, and when it's all over, then those learnings will be important for us, remember, and to act upon. But yes, we as a company, of course, have been influenced by this. Sports is a little bit part of our product portfolio, and for this to just drop like a stone with absolutely no sports there, I mean, it was crazy. So for us, at peak, the drop was around 75% that we dropped down, and yeah, of course, we benefited a little bit by having the shutdown at least not happening completely at one time. So it took, like, let's say 3-4 weeks for this to gradually shut down until you got to this complete standstill. So we had a little bit of time, not very much, and esports, which of course is the topic of today's meeting, that was very high on our agenda. So we'll get back to it, of course, but we put a lot of effort into it, and we saw some good results, yeah, I would say.
Dinos,
yes.
Tell us more about how you guys have been impacted, and what was your offering to replace the void?
Well, at this moment, we still feel that we play in a movie without a
surreal,
definitely, say, known scenario. So what we experienced around mid-March, we have seen the world to be frozen. So all of a sudden, everything shut down, other than a couple of leagues in specific countries. And then we saw that the business started going down, and probably it hit the lowest point the first week of April. And this was approximately 1/3 of the total business we usually had.
Okay.
That bad.
So beginning of April, your numbers, yes, dropped to 1/3 of what you usually see.
Yes.
Okay, which is similar to what Ebbe mentioned before. It was 75%, was it, Ebbe?
Yes.
Oh. Sorry, continue.
It depends again, what is the actual profile of your customers? It can vary from country to country. It depends.
Because the virus is hitting different continents in different times as we go along.
That is correct. For example, allow me a parenthesis, it is now that is going more strong in Latin America.
Exactly.
Well, before it was more strong in Europe.
Yeah, and before it was in Asia. Yeah.
So to answer your question, actually, what we did, immediately after the frozen world, we tried to shift priorities. We try to integrate more virtual games. We try to go to esports. Yes, well, we are very traditional sports book company. And myself, personally coming from very traditional sports concept. So we discovered it finally. And I should say on those stuff, we have created quick wins.
Yeah.
So it was to shift the priorities, it was to shift people even, discuss internally. Let's move fast with some project that was forgotten or postponed for different reasons. And we managed here, we are now 1st of June. And hopefully a new month comes along.
Yeah, and I mean, as you rightly said, these products have been there for a long time. It's not like esports just came knocking on our doors because COVID hit the sports betting industry. But Martin, perhaps you can elaborate further on this. We've seen a spike in esports, a spike maybe in virtual sports betting. Do you see the spike in these products to stay with us post-COVID, or do you see a return back to pre-COVID betting trends? I mean, what do you think? Do you think esports is just a temporary fix, or is it here to stay with us?
So like the guys said, I mean, this is put everybody on the back foot, you know. And in terms of like virtual sports has always been very popular. At most sports books out there, it's a top 5 sport, and even in some territories, I know it's a top 3 sport. So virtual has always been growing, and obviously it has that connection with the sport and sports bettors. And I guess that's why esports has grown so much popularity over the last couple of weeks, couple of months, particularly eFootball and eNBA, as we know, very, very popular. And we've seen a huge migration, cross-sell of sportsbook customers playing those particular games because they're quick. And again, if you look at the numbers and you look at the performance, everything's in play, everything's goals-based. So it's the same behavior as what you see in normal sports. What we haven't really seen is that migration of those customers moving towards the more traditional esports games. So your League of Legends and your Counter-Strike, you haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
And that comes back to the question: will those habits return to normal? For the customers who have migrated now to your football and your NBA, no, I think they continue. I think that will maintain. I think it's gone from strength to strength, week by week. I'm sure the guys have seen the similar numbers where they are. It's growing weekly, football and NBA. That kind of quick entertainment, I wouldn't say quick fix, but people like fast markets. Now they've become very, very popular over the last couple of years, in play in particular. So I don't see the kind of eFootball and the basketball going back pre-COVID numbers. But what is interesting will be so there could well be cannibalization on normal soccer events, believe it or not. That's how I'm thinking about this. Because if you think of the lower tier stuff, your Belgian second division, your Romanian, whatever it might be, we all have a little bet here and there on those type of events. We may see them impacted, because your esports sporting events, if you like, they're available now 24/7. So they may well take some proportion of the funds that customers are spending.
That trickle down on the second tier.
Yeah, and you might see a decrease on the kind of lower tier activity. That's what potentially could happen.
Okay, so you're saying that the change will happen and it will impact second tier, third tier,
second tier,
negatively, not positively.
Potentially, yes.
Negatively.
Yes. And what will be very interesting is we haven't seen it yet. We've tried to measure the numbers, particularly over the last couple of weeks. You need a few months data like this to really get the numbers in particular. But what we haven't seen, I mentioned, is we haven't seen that uplift from those sportsbook customers to the traditional esports. That's what will be interesting, I guess, over the next 3 to 6 months. Because as much as great as the news is that, the leagues are coming back, I think Serie A starts very soon. 2 or 3 weeks, we got the Premier League and we got La Liga starting. The future's still uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. We talk about second waves. Like, please God, let's cross our hands that it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But the calendar's still uncertain. Yeah. So I think you will see customers staying where they are for now.
Understood. And I mean, let's not forget that, okay, we operate in an online industry, so we, as an industry, suppliers, operators, can adapt quite swiftly. But let's not forget that the sports betting industry is also reliant on a number of other factors, including, for instance, match fixing. You have a robust regulatory system that's also monitoring match fixing at the highest level. Now, overnight, literally overnight, those games at the highest level have been switched off, and all the betting activity has moved on to lower tier games like Belarusian Football League comes to mind, and other aspects where, you know, probably there wasn't the robust system around it in terms of monitoring match fixing as good as it was in the top tier games. So have you stepped up the game to make sure that this vacuum is addressed in a swift manner? Or have you seen a hike in such activity that has to be addressed?
Yeah, so, well, I say in Altenar, we're doing risk management, obviously, 24/7. And me personally, I'm doing risk management since 2003. So there are means, there are ways to identify and spot irregular activity. So when you immediately get this irregular activity, there are processes. So you have to prevent further of such activity, and you have to protect your consumers and your customers to the extent. So I see we had some things getting attention a little bit that was not expected, but I don't think we can go to extent to say that it was fixed game or something. When you have such low profile event, these things could happen. And you just need to be careful to stop the activity to acceptable levels.
Yeah. Ebbe, have you, have you thought of this issue, which I'm sure you have? And
Yes, of course. I think there's a lot of myths about match fixing that and regulation towards match fixing, that people from outside the sports industry look at things a little bit different from us who are inside the sports industry. Of course, EveryMatrix, like I'm sure any other actor in this game, are happy for regulators to take a stance and try to clean up any such instances, but we are not relying on it, and so are none of our colleagues. The effects of this is regulation activity is very small. We, as I'm sure everyone else, we take care for match fixing by looking at betting patterns. This is a normal way to do it, and it works completely as well for esports as it does for anything else. We have as good information about what is happening in esports as we have for any lower league football or any exotic sport. It is the same. So the only things that matter a little bit is, well, in the beginning when esports is just booming enormously and growing, doubling week after week after week and just growing so fast, then you can get a little bit behind in monitoring the right players and checking out what are the right events and so on. But yeah, it does not take more than 1-2 months, and then you have your sights set in and you know how to deal with it. Now, I will add to that, there's actually one benefit from esports, which is that some of the esports events are arranged by operators or suppliers themselves. I think in this Steam panel we have an example of this, and so some of these events are actually arranged by people who make it their business to hire people and to monitor people, which is completely different from what happens in a lower league tennis tournament or lower league football tournament. If you go out and you hire people to play FIFA against each other and you put them in a studio, then you have much better chances of monitoring. So in fact, I would venture the other way and say there's every chance to believe that esports on average is better regulated than some of the regular sports. Why? Because it's happening electronically, it's happening in organized manner. The way people are taking actions, you can actually monitor this. I mean, there's nothing to stop you from actually monitoring click by click everything that a player is doing. So you can develop much more advanced tools than you could normally. So I think this, once we look forward, we'll see esports being spearheading the fight against match fixing, not lagging behind. I think Martin can tell us more about this.
I would agree with them.
No, 100%. That's a very good point there. Brilliant point. Just going back to the match fixing, pre-match, very easy to do. Very, very easy to measure sharp customers. If a customer places a bet on a Wednesday at X price and the price goes off Y on a Saturday, you know something was wrong. Yeah. In play, it's very difficult to spot in-play patterns. It takes time. As Eb says, sometimes it can take a month or two. We all have sophisticated, RM tools nowadays. But to find match fixing in play, it's not an easy thing to do. Pre-match, very easy. Going back to what Eb said, Digitain in particular, we've tried to reinvent ourselves during this period. We know how popular esports has become. We're hiring now professional local esports players, and we've created an esports hub, if you like, where we got players playing around the clock now. But like you said, this is the Digitain brand. We're not going to risk any type of match fixing. And you imagine the damage, the credibility damage of our brand would be for years. So there's no reason whatsoever why we would tolerate match fixing in that sense. So Eb's made a great point there. Yeah, I think any operator who offers this, provides this service naturally, there's an onus on them to make sure that there is no match fixing.
Yeah, and back on the theme of the title, obviously, we're betting on where the companies, operators, suppliers should bet on esports. And we have an audience, a worldwide audience. So we have operators and suppliers facing Asia, facing Europe, and facing the Americas. When we talk about esports, has this been embraced equally across various continents, or have you seen a spike in esports betting in different continents? What has your experience been so far, the first couple of months?
Okay, can I start with that?
Please.
I think geographically it made no difference to what we have seen. Of course, there are a couple of regulators, especially Colombia, that they don't allow sports at the moment, if I'm not wrong. But we have seen a general uptrend to the eFootball, especially FIFA. That game literally got much more attention than the other sports. So I would say that geographically did not make any difference. On the contrary, the content made a difference. Okay. And I say it was the same across Europe. Well, Africa is always on virtual center sport because they want to have quick things. But Latin America was also responded very well. I would say equally geographically, but content-wise, the eFootball made a difference.
Okay. Ebbe, Martin?
I will add one more thing, which is a similar point. Martin raised early in this chat how he believes that esports is here to stay and that we will see permanent taking market share from a lower league. And this is, I think, probably the most interesting question we have at the moment. It's something we monitor very, very closely, how this is going. And when I'm discussing this esports phenomenon, it is at the highlight of everything. Is it a temporary phenomenon or is it permanent? And I belong to the fraction of group of people who believe it's permanent. And I also subscribe to this idea that it will replace lower league events to some extent, which are as well known or as little known to the player as the sports events. Now, when you then look at it going a bit further, you also appreciate how much product development has happened in 2 months. It is staggering, and it's a great tribute to the iGaming industry the ability to pivot in so short time, and as Digitain have done here, create their own events. This is happening with other providers as well. Third-party companies that are building this. It is really very, very interesting what is happening, and in such a short time. Now imagine that you start continuing on this curve. I mean, the product innovation has just started. I think this has opened the eyes for a lot of industry actors to say, why should we only let ourselves suffice with what is on offer anyway from sports around the world? We have, of course, some examples of people doing the same with real sports, with these table tennis tournaments, which are arranged in studios and so on. Very much like a live casino product, just for sports. So I think that dimension, I think that is one of these learnings that will mean that if we look ahead just 1-2 years, we'll see a quite different sports landscape due to this whole thing. And if you look at geography, as Dinos also pointed out, well, the product hasn't even matured or developed yet to fit the audience. Where's the e-cricket? Where's people playing Madden, which is the #1 betting sport in North America? It's not there yet. It will be coming, and when it's there, you will see. I mean, NFL has only 32 teams. That's then you have some college football, etc. But the supply of events is quite low for what is the most popular betting sport north of the border. So a lot of new developments are going to happen. A lot of learnings here that people will plow into product development and arrange Madden tournaments and arrange baseball for South Korea and Japanese audience and so on. So there's a lot of interesting things ahead of us. And that is what makes me confident that what we see here has been a wake-up call and will lead to esports having a permanent and large share of sports betting overall. Then we can guess at how large this would be, 15%, 20%, but it is going to be large and it's going to be comparable with your, let's say, normal 3-4 level sport that you would have normally.
Yeah, well, it's time to wrap this up, but before we go, I'd love to pick one last comment from each of you. And what was the take-home message or the life message for the company that COVID has forced, let's say, the boards to discuss and to implement permanently moving forward? So what are the things that the company has taken so far? We'll start with you, Dinos. We'll start with Dinos and we'll finish with Martin,
Sorry, Martin
as the sponsor of this panel.
Okay. What's the take? I hope this movie will soon finish. And then we all come out stronger. What we learn, that we need to be agile. We definitely have to accept working remotely. We definitely need to make sure that we have alternative products. Electronic offer is much more important. We should definitely put on the risk appetite that things can break easier than before. And the companies need to be a bit more careful in all aspects. We make this conference now, Eman, as a virtual conference. You know what I mean? So we have to discuss, if we want to discuss, we have to do it online. I don't know how will be the reaction or the business appetite of potential customers and how happy they would be to sign agreements from distance. It remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But general agility and flexibility.
Ebbe?
Yeah, I very much subscribe to the agility point. It has been for us just fun and encouraging to see how our own team could adapt and quickly change from an already set roadmap and change direction very rapidly and be able to produce something that I think has turned out to be really high quality. We managed to put out an esports product. We managed to put out a dedicated virtual sports product. We put out, I think this or next week we'll have a Forex product where you can trade or bet on exchange rates going up and down. you're looking at alternatives, and everybody's innovating, and that is great. It's fun and made long live. The other part, which I think Dinos mentions, which is very true, is diversification. So for us, one of the great positives has been the growth in casino. So we, of course, offer both sports and casino. So casino has taken a massive jump forward with online casino, more or less forced, of course, by operators moving marketing from offline to online. So this has benefited us a lot, and I think it will also have raised awareness among operators to take this more seriously, even people who are very sports focused or very offline focused, land-based casinos, etc. So I think for us who sit on this panel and are providers for online, this marks a shift and a glorious next couple of years, because we will see a lot of brick and mortar. Now finally the elephants are getting out of the stable and saying, yes, we have to go online, and they will do it, and they will realize that they will make a lot of extra money with this.
Thank you, Ebbe. Last comments in your hands, Martin.
I think what we've looked at ourselves here is not go into survival mode. That's what we don't want to do. History tells us that's not the way to get out of troublesome times like this. We need to reinvent ourselves. There's many cases when change or something unexpected like COVID-19 has put companies out of business. And I think everybody in business today is at risk. But at the same time, these situations has also made companies very strong or reinvent themselves. You know, if we take, for example, the invention of the internet, that put many companies on the back foot. All right, those who couldn't reinvent themselves for the internet age ultimately struggled, and most of them went out of business. You know, that's why, from our perspective, again, if you think about Uber's putting taxi companies out of business, not because of Uber, but because taxi companies refuse to change. I think companies need to change and reinvent themselves and look at how things can be different going forward. That's why, from our perspective, I've talked about the kind of esports hub that we're building. We've introduced a new table football suite. Again, we've opened up a new building in the home country here in Armenia, where we got professional table football players playing each other. You know, so we're looking at, you know, with that sport and calendar still uncertain, who knows what can happen in the next 6 to 12 months. You know, as we said, please God, things do improve. But we need to look at how can we supply our partners with content, and how can we increase our sales and support other people in the industry with content as well. That's what we're looking at. So very much reinventing ourselves and not getting into survival mode. And hopefully the other guys in the call are following us in similar suit here with this one.
Well, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of it. Betting on esports amid COVID. Ebbe, Dinos, Martin, thank you very much for being with us.